Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Business. Glad to have you back. Regardless if you are listening on 94.5 The Answer or you're checking out one of our podcasts, maybe on Apple, maybe on Google, maybe on Spotify, or you are watching the video on our YouTube channel, regardless of how you found us, I'm glad you're here. Our next guest is our featured guest for the day, and it's Mark Farris. Mark Farris is the CEO at GADC, the Greenville Area Development Corporation. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Rick.
It's good to have you here. I know you're busy.
Yeah, not too busy to come here, though.
Well, I appreciate that. As a matter of fact, we were talking before we came on air, and you had a busy night last night, right? You had some Swiss folks in town. Tell us about that.
As happens pretty often, Greenville is an international community.
That's right.
And last night we had a reception for the Swiss General Consul General, and the Chamber of Commerce of Switzerland. And we had, about 40, 50 people in Greenville talking about the opportunities for inward investment from Switzerland and, the connections that we could make to try to generate more international business here.
How did that come about? It really interests me because, you got more than Switzerland that pops in on Greenville from time to time. How does that thing occur?
So there's in Greenville, a lot of people don't know this, but for the two Carolinas, North and South, there's a European American Chamber of Commerce. It was formed a couple of years ago, in fact, and they take opportunities like this to have companies, especially obviously from Western Europe, to come to Greenville and to generate that kind of connection that's made with U.S. companies and with economic development organizations.
Now, the European Chamber, it is located in Greenville?
It is.
But does it works for South Carolina?
And North Carolina.
The same one is headquartered right here.
Right. We are the Carolinas chapter of the European American Chamber of Commerce, and they really did the event.
So I would guess since they're in your backyard, you get the benefit of the doubt when somebody's wanting to come and visit one of these two states?
Yes, certainly. And Greenville, Rick, is a very international city. We were talking earlier about the census information that came down a couple of months ago. It showed that Greenville County had 13,000 new people moved to Greenville in 2022, and we found that 1 in 5 of those were of international origin.
How about that? How's that compare?
We're a lot higher than most places in the Southeast. We're higher than Charleston, higher than Richland and Columbia. So we have probably the greatest concentration of both international businesses and international folks in the state of South Carolina.
When I moved to Greenville, and I consider myself a South Carolinian now because it was 20 years ago, even though I know that a lot of folks listening and watching are going, no, Rick, you're not, because you have to be born here, right? Okay, so I got it. You were born here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Went to Clemson. Right. So you're a South Carolina boy. But regardless, I do feel like a South Carolinian. Came here a long time ago, 20 years. But when I got here, Greenville was a hidden gem. It's no longer a hidden gem. And when I introduced you on the intro to this show, I kind of made a little bit of a joke that if you don't like the fact that our roads are so busy these days, you can thank Mark and his team for that, right? But we are not, and I'm joking, we are not a hidden gem anymore. And talk about that. I mean, what a transformation that this city has made in 2 decades.
Sure. And of course, it's been longer than 2 decades.
Of course.
A lot of people consider Greenville a 30-year overnight success. And there's a lot of truth to that because it was, there were groups of people 50 years ago even that were planning to make Greenville a special city. I did a little bit of research about international business and found that Greenville used to host the largest textile industry trade show in the world.
I did know that.
And started in 1917.
Yes, right.
And in fact, in 1950s, I think we had 40,000 people that would come and attend this textile trade show in Greenville. And then the city leaders and community leaders actually across the Upstate began the process of attracting the companies that made the textile machinery equipment. We all have seen textile operations where they're weaving cloth or dyeing and finishing, or I worked in a textile mill, as did my family for generations. But the communities of the Upstate decided to pursue the equipment manufacturers. And who were they? They were Swiss, Italian, German. And so in the 50s, they began the process of attracting those companies here. So by the time BMW rolls around in 1992, this community is very comfortable with that growth, very comfortable with the international exposure, and vice versa. The companies there were comfortable with the upstate of South Carolina, so it was an easy thing to attract those companies and even more.
So Greenville Convention Center was built to house those huge expo fairs for the textile industry, right? They got 10 football fields of space. That's why that sucker was built a long time ago.
Absolutely, that's exactly why.
All right, so GADC, nonprofit. You were founded, 2001. Greenville County Commission founded it, so we're talking a little over 2 decades ago, shortly before I moved to town. Why was it founded to begin with? Does the mission now match the mission then?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly, the county council decided that our best efforts to recruit, especially manufacturing, distribution, office projects, need to be an organization that was specialized in those 3 areas. And so they created GADC, funded it. Of course, we are technically a 501c3. We're not a county department, although the majority of our funding comes from the county. Since our inception in 2001, the organization's helped recruit almost $7 billion worth of industry investment to Greenville and about 36,000 jobs as a result of those company investments. And last year, for example, we had $470 million and 2,200 new jobs in Greenville. So there's been a long history of success, but it was primarily an attempt to focus the recruitment efforts on that manufacturing distribution office.
How does your organization, how is it structured? How many, staff do you have? And then also, who do you, Mark Farris, report to?
Yeah, I have 7 members of staff. We're adding a new investor relations individual coming up soon, but I report to a board. I have a board of directors, 16 members that are appointed entirely by the county council. In fact, 3 members of council serve on my board as well, county council. So there's a direct connection there. Our area of responsibility is Greenville County, but that includes municipalities, and we work as partners with the different municipalities. As certainly when we have a company interested in those cities, we kind of turn that over a lot of times to those folks, or we carry it through to fruition.
Mention partners. Let's talk about partners. Upstate Alliance. They're a partner, right?
Absolutely. Upstate Alliance is tasked with generating opportunities for us in the upstate, the 10-county region stretching from Cherokee to Oconee. And so they go out and find the companies, and then our individual economic development organizations in the 10 counties are responsible for landing those companies. And a lot of time that's in competition with Georgia, North Carolina, but also other communities in South Carolina. I know my career, I spent 27 years in York County.
That's right.
And lost a lot of projects to Greenville,
Yeah.
Especially in the manufacturing arena. And I figured I would join them instead of trying to beat them.
Right, can't beat them, join them. So, so you're saying that what John Lummis, your colleague over at Upstate Alliance, and his team does is they tee it up, they get you the lead, they turn it to you and say, "We'll close it."
Right.
Right. That's the way that relationship basically works.
Yep.
And then the relationship between you and the folks like York County or Anderson County or Spartanburg County, I would guess that is a little more competitive in nature.
It is. Certainly, we're charged with bringing companies to Greenville County. Now, while we're certainly excited when we have large operations that locate, or any company really that locates in the 10-county area, Anderson and Spartanburg are certainly competitors when it comes to the location. A lot of times, when a company decides on an area, there's multiple locations that they could potentially go to, and that includes the states of North Carolina and Georgia, and we compete obviously with those communities as well. But when they say, "Yeah, I want to be in the upstate of South Carolina," then technically we're competitors. But it's awfully nice to have large announcements in some of these other adjoining counties, because we share a workforce, right? So we have a lot of folks commute into Greenville County, but a lot go to those locations in Anderson or Spartanburg to work. So we're kind of all in it together, but at the end of the day,
That's right.
We are competitors.
And I wouldn't have expected any answer other than that. You know, there's a ton of reasons to live in Greenville, South Carolina. We know that, right? I mean, the quality of life is amazing. The schools are good. You can buy a house at a pretty good rate here. Beautiful, gorgeous downtown, all kinds of outside activities. We're at the foot of the mountains, right? Not telling you anything this guy doesn't know because you say it all the time. We're 3 hours from the beach. We're 2 hours from Charlotte. We're 2 hours from Atlanta. We got 2 interstates running through. We're a foodie paradise. Yeah. All kinds of reasons to live here. What are the reasons to work here, to locate here, to expand here?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of statistics that I think take people by surprise. If you look at Greenville County, over 640 manufacturing companies are in Greenville County. So we're a base of manufacturing. If you think about, the reason that Greenville developed, it was because of our fast-moving rivers, right? You had the Reedy, the Enoree, the Saluda, and you had textile operations that needed the water-powered looms. And so that set the groundwork for a lot of the manufacturing, especially as industrialization occurred. Now, obviously, we've carried that through automotive, aviation, advanced materials, life science has been a great area for us. But the benefits of the Upstate and of Greenville in particular is the labor. We win or lose projects now based on our ability to convince a prospective company that they're going to be able to find the labor that they need. We have 28 universities that are in the Upstate, and those connections with, for example, Clemson. We have the highest number of registered professional engineers per capita in the nation in the Upstate. We just located an engineering company, Garver. They're bringing an operation here that'll employ 95 folks. Most of them will be engineers. They do a lot of mechanical and electrical engineering type work. And the reason they found us attractive was because they knew they could find their labor here, as opposed to some of our competing areas. So,
take me behind the curtain here for a second. So let's say that a representative from Company X that is located wherever, right, comes to town, and you are trying to close that deal that Mr. Lummis and his team set up for you. Let's just say, right? And so these folks come to town. What does it look like when you're meeting them? I'm just wondering, you mentioned you might take somebody for a tour at CMI or maybe CUI car or BMW, or do you sit down with Dr. Keith Miller over at Greenville Tech? Do these kinds of conversations occur?
Absolutely, all of those. When I first got into business 38 years ago, companies would come in and they would spend a day and a half.
Yeah.
We would even take companies to play golf.
Yeah, right.
That's how, and they were looking at, 30 different communities and, 5 sites in each community.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have the benefit of the internet. Okay. So there was a lot more due diligence, a lot more qualification that had to occur in that process. That's all changed now. Companies come to us. We have 2 hours. They know what we have. They know what we don't have. So a lot of times companies won't even look at us if we don't have the requirements that they need. So it's a much more streamlined situation. So a lot of times we only have a couple of hours to differentiate ourselves, and we focus on the things that are important to them. Certainly that labor force, the cost of operations. The Southeast and Greenville County is one of the lowest cost of operations areas in the world. We focus on the out of doors, the assets that we have, the natural environment that we have. And Greenville has a pretty special sense of place. If you think about us in relation or comparison to a lot of communities in the Southeast and, even in South Carolina, Greenville has a lot of assets. They're downtown. The fact that we do have so many existing manufacturing operations, all of that combines to create an environment that companies want to be here. I've had several companies just since I've been here that'll call me and say, I want to be in Greenville. And normally that doesn't happen. Normally they call and say, well, I'm looking in North Carolina, Georgia, and what can you do for me? I need incentives. I need free land. And that doesn't happen a lot now. A lot of times, companies, obviously, like I mentioned, their first search is on the internet, but Greenville has such a special sense of place that it draws companies on its own.
You talked about incentives. What leeway do you have in GADC to offer the types of incentives that some of these companies are looking for?
Right. That is one of the things I think that a lot of people don't understand. We're the authorized agent of Greenville County to offer incentives, and they can be substantial. In conjunction with what the state of South Carolina offers, Greenville County has the ability to lower property taxes by as much as 43% for a company and lock that in for a 30-year period. So it's, that's called fee in lieu of tax. We can issue infrastructure credits to help develop infrastructure associated with that company's investment. So from a property tax perspective, that's where our largest incentives exist. From the state's perspective, the state derives its revenue from sales tax, corporate income, personal income. And so people are important. And so the state gives most of its incentives associated with the number of people and the pay scale associated with those jobs. So in combination with the county's incentives from property tax, real and personal property tax, South Carolina puts together a pretty good package for most companies.
Sounds like it. You talked about sometimes companies, all the time, companies are going to do due diligence and decide if they want to move to Greenville or not. But are there times when you all do your due diligence to determine if a company is the right fit to move here to begin with?
Yeah, we do, certainly. Every company is not a good fit for Greenville. If a company comes in, I think the Southeast in general has had a reputation for cheap land, cheap labor. We don't have that. So if a company comes in and says, yeah, we're going to pay $12 an hour, we discourage them. Say, look, I'm sure you're a fine company,
right?
But if that's your pay scale, you're not going to find people here. You're better to move on. If there's a company that has some environmental consideration, if they have effluent or discharge, if they have some kind of hazardous process or a process that creates a lot of noise or generates a lot of pollution, then we try to discourage them and say you might be better served in another community because frankly I'm not sure we'd be able to support you here.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't happen often.
Of course, but you have to find a polite way to say thanks, but no thanks. Talk about, let's end with this. And you got a new long-range strategic plan for economic development. First of all, when was that put together?
That was just last year.
Just last year.
Finalized. Well, it was a 3-year process, but we actually just rolled it out last year.
Right. And how far does that plan look into the future?
At least 5 years.
It's 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that on some kind of rotating basis that you update it every so often, 5 years forward?
Well, the business is pretty dynamic. And so, what we pursued.
It's a living document?
It is. What we pursued even 10 years ago certainly is not the same as we're now pursuing.
If we take a peek into that, what will we see?
Well, if you think about, we've broken the plan down in 3 areas: business development, tools and sites, and organizational outreach. So, Greenville County has developed so rapidly that we do not have an adequate inventory of industrial property. So we had our first new business park in 20 years announced in 2021. The Sudler Group comes to Greenville, builds Fox Hill Business Park. They're now almost completing construction on their 3rd building, which has already been leased.
Yeah.
So it's been very active. But the great part is we've had a lot of interest in Greenville from developers that are out of market. They've come in, they've bought property, they've established a presence in Greenville, and that's wonderful. But as we rapidly develop, and certainly that includes residentially and commercially as well, we don't have a set of property that we need to count on for the future. So we're out trying to work with developers, work with property owners, work with other partners to identify parcels that we could grow as industrial sites. If you think about organizational outreach, we as an organization need to adjust our metrics. Obviously jobs and investment at the end of the year are the 2 things that we measure the greatest, but are we raising per capita incomes, for example, in Greenville County? South Carolina lags in that category, so we want to focus on those companies that will help accomplish that. So there's those 3 areas that we're going to be working on to try to do incremental growth, certainly, and adjust Greenville Economic Development's vision for the future based on the changes that are occurring in the economy.
Great stuff, Mark. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Rick. It's my pleasure.
Enjoyed it. Great info. And if we're going to judge your success and the success of your team by driving around and walking around and looking at this beautiful city that we all live in, you're doing a bang-up job. Folks, we're going to take a quick break and we will be back with our next guest. Don't go anywhere.